Hello and welcome to Euphoria. Today we're going to continue and hopefully finish with the design of a new building to go in my LEGO city, a MOC or my own creation. In this series of videos we're looking at the process of design, and later I'll be making this building out of LEGO bricks and placing it in my LEGO city. This is going to be a half modular building, and I'm basing the idea around this little building, which is the Corner Deli from LEGO set 76311. We've already done quite a lot of the design work, and you can see that in the previous videos in this series. So join me in this episode where we'll be finalising the design of this new MOC. In the previous videos in this series, we've looked at the inspiration for starting this MOC after making the little deli building from the LEGO set 76311. We put some thought into deciding on a more definite concept for the MOC. We spent some time to visualise some ideas, and we worked out how we could make it into a modular building. This will be a city building, and we settled on a European style for the building that might allow us to have some interesting colours and features to make a building that will fit well in my LEGO city. Even though it's not very large, we're going to create the impression that it's two narrow buildings, with the deli on the ground floor of one, a small shop in the ground floor of the other, and an entrance to the small apartment on the floors above. There will be 4 sections or modules: the pavement and ground floor with the 2 shops, the first floor with the living space of the apartment, the second floor with the bedroom for the apartment, and the roof with a roof terrace or roof garden. In the last couple of videos we looked at the detail of the design and laid down some digital bricks in the Studio design program, and that let us see how it's starting to develop as a proper 3D model. Now there's a bit more to do to finish the design before we can obtain the parts we need and start building this MOC. I'm sorry it's taken so long since the previous video in this series. This final stage of design has taken me longer than I expected, despite having already done the structural and detailed designs. That's mostly down to other commitments and other projects, some of which are top secret at the moment, but also because I was developing the design at the same time as the video, and I wanted to get this right before I commit to buying the final set of parts. Now we're going to develop the final design for this MOC. We'll continue working in the computer using the program Studio, which is a free computer design program available from LEGO Bricklink. The goal of this stage is to finish off the design so that we can purchase the LEGO parts needed to build the model. We'll also be looking at the Bricklink website to check on part colours, availability and price. There's no point designing something and then being frustrated later should we not be able to easily get the parts we need. Let's just have a little talk about colours. We looked at the colours of the deli part of the MOC in the previous design videos, where we decided to keep the black window and door frames from the set and obviously keep the yellow shop signs round the top. We also worked out a colour scheme for the walls to keep the original dark red bricks for the upper stories with white surrounds for the windows to lighten and contrast with the dark red. For the shop building, which is the other half of the MOC, we've designed the ground floor with a white shop front and grey walls round the sides. Although if used in a modular setting, not much of those external walls will be visible. For the upper stories, a lighter pastel colour would be a good contrast with the dark red of the Deli building and provide the continental vibe that we're looking for in this MOC. There are a few LEGO colours that could achieve that, and we can try them out very easily in the computer to see which one we like the best. I think I'm coming back to this yellow colour, which is called Bright Light Yellow by Bricklink and Cool Yellow by LEGO. For the roof, we again want colours that provide a distinction between the shop building and the Deli building. For the Deli roof, I went with white for the decorative cornice, which again provides a good contrast with the dark red walls and lets us use the wheel arch parts from the original set, although other colours are available for this part. For the roof of the shop building, we can use a colour for the cornice that contrasts both with that of the Deli and with the walls of the shop. But I thought it would be good to provide some continuity with the vertical block of colour in the walls, so chose the same dark bluish grey for the cornice. Let's think about the shop and its contents. It's very small, so there's not much room inside. It's only 8 by 8 studs inside, which is only a quarter of a half modular footprint. So maybe a shop selling small things would be a good use for the space. Something like a shop selling bags or accessories, or makeup and cosmetics. I asked you guys for some ideas and you came back with some really good ones. For example, a small salon, a comic book store, giving a nod to the set's origins as a Spider-Man set, a store selling mobile phones and accessories, a bit like the little kiosk that I adapted from the instructions from LEGO for a modular expansion build, a newsagent's kiosk, and a small street food outlet or a food takeaway. I found that there's a printed tile with Andrea on it, which doesn't say what the shop sells, but it does provide a nice splash of this magenta colour against the white shop front. Of course, there are plenty of different printed tiles and hundreds of sticker sheets available from current and previous sets, and many of those, especially from the Friends and the City lines of sets, could be used for a small shop. But I still like this Andrea tile because it's printed rather than a sticker and not specific to the type of shop, although it does have some musical notes on it. I was originally thinking of this shop as a small boutique, but now, looking at that printed tile, I'm wondering about some kind of music shop. As vinyl seems to be trendy at the moment, maybe my little town of Harmonia is ready for a record shop where new ones can be bought and ordered if required, and maybe they could do a second-hand exchange service as well. We would need to add some racks to display the current stock, and we can use some printed tiles for the records. We'll need a small till as well. and I think we may be able to find a printed tile looking like a record for the shop front. So that's the final design for the shop finished. Now we'll have a quick look at the interior of the deli itself. Actually, I'm more or less happy with the details of the original deli, with its shelves full of essential items and the little till that came with the set. We already added some additional shelves, so we just need to fill out the contents a bit more with some suitable and colourful items on the shelves. We can use coloured and printed bricks in various sizes, and perhaps some minifig accessories like bottles to represent the typical items found in a deli. We'll keep the ATM inside the deli, although we don't need the play feature of the original set, where it could be pushed away from the wall using a button on the refrigerator. That reminds me, we previously deferred the decision about whether to keep the fridge on the outside of the deli. My original feeling was that I didn't want it, but now I'm thinking it does add something to the MOC, and there is room for it on the pavement outside the front of the deli. So, with a small modification, as we don't need the push feature at the bottom, let's add it back. In place of the lower set of windows on the front of the deli, we can keep the windows above the fridge. Just to finish off the exterior of the deli, we can keep the ATM sign outside the deli as well. We can also move the deli sign on the outside a bit higher up. That just gives a slightly cleaner look to the canopy over the initial design of the set, where the sign was attached, sort of sticking out of the side of the canopy. Of course, we'll add the signage to the signboard above the deli using the original stickers from the set. But we did add an additional 2x4 yellow tile when we expanded the deli, and I'm still looking for an appropriate sticker for that tile. I could just obtain a second sticker sheet and use the same sticker as on the front of the deli, but it might be nicer to find a different one. And of course we'll use the stickered tiles from the set for the canopy of the deli, although again there is a couple of blank tiles round the side that could use additional stickers. There's also just room to add a really small till. Fortunately, we included a couple of studs on the floor of the deli to attach it to. I think now the slightly larger original till from the deli would go better in the little shop. Now we can look at the design of the interior of the apartment. There are 2 floors in the apartment that sits over the shop and the deli. The first floor is reached by the stairs from the entrance door on the street and will be the living space for the apartment. The second floor is reached by a staircase from the first floor, and this is going to be the bedroom and bathroom. Neither of these are very large, and they're both pretty narrow because of the small footprint of the building. So there isn't very much space in the apartment, and we'll have to keep the interiors pretty simple. I do like to add interior details to my MOCs, but to be honest, I don't regard the design of the furniture to be that critical. as it's not structural, it's easy to change the contents later, even during the build itself. And of course, the owners or tenants of this apartment might have their own ideas. But it is worth working out what kind of things we can fit in the limited space available. So for the living area of this small apartment, there's room for a sofa, a standard lamp, a TV cabinet with a TV on it, and a small cupboard or side table. There's also room by the nice large windows for a small dining table and a couple of simple chairs. And at the far end we can install some kitchen cabinets, a hob and a kitchen sink. Maybe we can also add a picture on the wall. So I think that's enough to give the impression of a workable living area and kitchen. Now let's quickly move up to the second floor of the apartment, which is going to be the bedroom area. Here we need to include a bedroom and somehow find space for some sort of bathroom. But it's rather difficult to fit that into the rather oddly shaped space we have available. But actually, a design choice we made earlier might help us here, because there's an area of blank wall on this corner behind which we can build a very small bathroom. A larger room would block circulation through the apartment unless we build the room somewhere else, and that would mean changing the windows, which would spoil the exterior. So there's not much room for anything in here apart from a WC and a tiny hand basin. But I think Honor is satisfied because we have at least got some sort of bathroom in the apartment. Now there's quite a big space for the bedroom, and in that end of the apartment we can put a bed and some small bedside cabinets. There's room for a chest of drawers and a wardrobe either side of the door, which still gives access to the balcony. I think if we had a proper corner modular building, the additional space would have made for a much nicer apartment, and of course allowed more space for the shops on the ground floor. Nevertheless, we've managed to design an apartment on 2 floors with a reasonable living space on the first floor and a bedroom and bathroom on the second floor. Now we'll look at the roof terrace. This is the area on the roof, accessible via the staircase from the top floor of the apartment. Again, although it might look like 2 buildings from the ground floor, this roof terrace is all one space belonging to the apartment. We already did the design of the parapet that goes round the roof terrace, including the fancy architrave over the dark red building containing the deli. So on the roof terrace we want to create a relaxing space where minifigs can sit, maybe provide some shade for them in the form of a pergola, and add a bit of colour with some plants. At first I was looking at creating a pergola using bricks, plates and tiles like this, and that would of course be possible, but then I remembered the shade for the apartment that was built as part of the Creator 3-in-1 townhouse, cafe and pet shop set 31097. That employs a technique using tiles fitted edgeways into clips. I thought that using tiles in clips was an illegal technique, but apparently with these O clips it seems to be acceptable. I did have that set and built it, which confirmed that it works okay, although I turned it into a modular building, and there's a video all about how I did that on the channel. So we can add a pergola to the roof terrace using that technique, and I've taken the opportunity to build a seat into the structure of the pergola to provide a nice sheltered spot for minifigs to sit. Now we can add some planting to the roof terrace to provide some colour and interest to the space. We have to bear in mind that this is a roof, so plants have to go in pots rather than in the ground, but there's still plenty of different types of Lego plant and flower pieces and designs for plants that we can use. So I'll add some that provide a variety of heights, colours and styles, and then we'll have to see what parts we can get during the procurement. So now we're nearly done with the design. There's just a few finishing touches to add, and then we can call this design complete. Now I like to add downpipes or drain pipes to my buildings, and I do that for most of my MOCs. You could argue that's not necessary, but I find that downpipes and other details provide additional interest to the exterior of the building. For some of my MOCs that's been straightforward, but for others, like this Honeyduke's Sweet Shop MOC, we had to find ways to bend the downpipe in or out from the wall. We have the same problem with this MOC because of the canopy over the deli, the overhang of the shop building, and the signboards over the shops. After trying several different solutions, it turns out to be quite difficult. So in the end, the best way seems to be to run the downpipe down the side of the deli and adjust the canopy slightly to avoid it. We can also put a grate in the pavement to take the runoff from the downpipe. Now I would like to add some minifigs to this MOC. For some of my other MOCs, we put a lot of care into selecting minifigs for specific roles and positions within the building. For this MOC, we really need a shopkeeper for the record shop, and somebody to look after the deli, and maybe someone to live in the apartment. So we can look for some minifigs, maybe fairly generic ones from the city line, or minifigs that don't represent superheroes or special characters. And finally, we mustn't forget to put the lamppost in place on the pavement. We can use the standard lamppost design that I use for the main area of my Lego city. Now, as we've been going through this final design process, I've been checking for parts availability to avoid using parts that are very expensive or just not available. In some cases there was some inconsistent part usage and mistakes. For example, I found that I'd used some of these bricks, which are 1x1x5 bricks with a hollow stud, but they're quite expensive and can be replaced with the equivalent 1x1x5 brick with a solid stud, which are much cheaper. We'll do a final inventory and parts list, which we can check through when we're doing the procurement for this MOC. But that's really part of the next stage of development, which we can talk about later. So that's the final design done for all of the sections and modules of this little MOC. There was quite a lot to think about there, even though we'd already done the detailed design and all the previous design stages. I'm very happy with the design, and I think we developed something that more or less aligns with the original concept of this MOC as a small European style city centre building with a bodega on the ground floor and an apartment above. As I said last time, it might be possible to expand this into a full corner modular building in the future by moving the building over by a couple of studs and expanding the footprint onto another half base plate. But I certainly won't be doing that right now, as I'm keen to get the parts we need to build this, to see how it works in practice and how it looks when built out of Lego bricks. The next thing to do is to procure all the additional parts I need to make this building, and although I do have the parts from the original set, there are lots of extra parts needed to build this MOC. So join me in the next video, where I'm expecting to be able to tell you something about the procurement process and show you progress on getting all the parts. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so that you don't miss out on any updates. Thanks for watching, and join me again for more updates on LEGO sets, modular buildings, my own designs and builds, updates on my LEGO city and other LEGO related content.